Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade. Less than 1 year into his tenure, the Montana State Prison warden is shown the exit. The Montana Department of Corrections confirmed to MTN News tonight that Warden Michael Fletcher was fired from his job today after just 10 months as head of the state prison in Deer Lodge. Now, the department refusing to give a reason for Fletcher's termination, stating it is a confidential matter. MTN's John Amy learned of the decision and is imbued with the latest.
The department said the warden's firing occurred before the end of his 12-month probationary period. Fletcher was hired back in March to replace Warden Leroy Kierkegaard, who retired last April. While no details were provided from the Department of Corrections, I did receive allegations of complaints filed against Warden Fletcher by employees at the prison who wish to remain anonymous. I was able to confirm back in December from the Montana Department of Labor and Industry that it did receive one official complaint concerning the warden's office in 2017, but they could not release this complaint due to privacy issues. However, the Labor Department last week said it could release this complaint, but we have not received it yet and don't know the nature of the complaint. The Department of Corrections said Fletcher will be replaced by an interim warden, Jim Salmonson, who is right now an associate warden at the prison. John Amy, MTN News in Butte.
Thanks so much, John. Now, Fletcher was hired after working as the superintendent of a youth correctional facility in Las Vegas. Authorities confirm a Billings man was killed after an accident at a Southside construction site this morning. The Yellowstone County Coroner's Office identifies the victim as 39-year-old David Shepard. Fisher Construction is overseeing the work at South 29th Street and First Avenue South. On its Facebook page, the company states it is assisting with the investigation but cannot provide details at this time. Shepard's cause of death will be determined in an autopsy scheduled for Wednesday. Maintaining a reliable base of energy, an issue discussed from Washington, D.C. all the way to Colstrip, Montana today. Senator Steve Daines telling U.S. lawmakers coal-fired generation plants must be part of our future energy plan because extreme cold and heat demand it. This, as the Trump administration points out the recent need for coal to help the nation through a 2-week cold snap that took out power and cost lives. Here in Montana, nowhere is coal more important than in Rosebud County, but half of the Colstrip power complex will soon shut down. As Q2's Jay Cohn reports, that reality leaves the community with some big decisions.
With Colstrip Units 1 and 2, the oldest of the power plants, now facing a shutdown date in just 4 years, the focus here now is on the future and what that might hold.
I don't want to see us fail. I don't want to see this town go under. I want to see us thrive again. So for me, it would be carbon capture.
State Senator Dwayne Ankney arranged Tuesday's informal meeting among community leaders here to explore ideas on how to use $10 million in community impact funds set aside by Puget Sound Energy. PSC owns half of the Colstrip plants 1 and 2, and as part of its latest rate case in Washington state, agreed to put this money aside to help the county, the city, and the region transition to its new future.
Change is inevitable, and that's what usually is a better outcome if you stay positive and don't just wish for what you had in the past, because we've got to change and keep up with the times. And apparently this was part of a deal that we had no hand in, and so we may as well be positive and hope for a better outcome.
Those community impact dollars will become available at the end of this year, so the time for planning is now.
Next Monday, Governor Bullock and Attorney General Tim Fox will be in Colstrip to convene the first meeting of the Colstrip Advisory Group, the first of many discussions to address the region's changing economic climate. Jay Cohn, MTN News, Colstrip.
Thanks, Jay. Now, the Colstrip Advisory Group includes representatives from state and local governments, union leaders, as well as officials from Puget Sound Energy and the state departments of Labor, Commerce, and Environmental Quality. Well, the phrase fake news is shouted daily in print, on TV, and in social media. Tonight, a panel of local news experts weighed in on how these words have changed our country. Q2's Dustin Kleeman joins us in studio with more on tonight's discussion. Dustin.
Good evening, Jeanelle. Tonight, that panel agreed. Fake news, its perception and use, isn't getting any better. But there are solutions. At the Billings Public Library, the panel revisited the topic it discussed last year. Fake news not only is that news is fake at times, but it is also used to describe stories that readers or viewers don't like, despite its accuracy. Now, that confirmation bias to confirm one's beliefs can be remedied. That prescription, more civil public discourse.
We have a conversation, we make sure that we keep talking about our sources of information, where we're getting our information. We have discourse and dialogue, and we have disagreements, and we have heated arguments about things, but we're talking. And I think probably the best thing we can do is to make sure that we keep some kind of civil conversation going about this.
I think if we can restore our civil society, fake news will disappear, because it is the lack of confidence in each other as citizens that generates the conditions for fake news.
We haven't figured out how to quite incorporate journalism as a value. I mean, we value it, but as something that we see as if this disappears, we are less of a community, less of a state.
One of the suggestions from Darryl Ehrlich, he says, read a lot. That's the only way to vaccinate yourself from fake news. Jeanelle.
All right, thanks so much, Dustin. Montana prosecutors and child advocates say methamphetamine use has created a crisis of neglected and sometimes abused children. But prosecutors say State Child Protective Services has refused to give them key evidence that could help the children and the family. MTN's Mike Dennison has more on this standoff and how it's apparently been resolved.
When state child protection workers suspect children have been exposed to highly toxic methamphetamine, they can order a test of the kids' hair follicles. But the state has been refusing to give results of these tests to prosecutors or other child advocates, even though the legislature passed a law last year requiring it. Prosecutors and others say not knowing or having that evidence of meth exposure makes it harder to take action against the parents or to help them.
We know we have a meth epidemic in the state. It's going to take a team-coordinated approach, and when we remove a child from a drug-addicted parents and do nothing for the parents, there's nothing to think that we're going to get that family reunited any sooner. Law enforcement's got to get involved in extreme cases because these parents need rehab.
The issue came to a head last week at a legislative committee. Lewis and Clark County Attorney Leo Gallagher told the panel that with 1,600 kids in foster care statewide because of meth, it was ridiculous to withhold this information from law enforcement and others.
But it gives us information that we can use with others involved in the child protection system, including the courts, as to the circumstances that has put this child at risk.
A top state official told lawmakers last week the state feared that providing the information would violate a federal privacy law, jeopardizing $13 million in federal funding. But now, state health officials have changed course. On Tuesday, they said they've directed Child Protective Service officials to start giving the toxicology reports to prosecutors and others connected with court actions involving the care of neglected children. Gallagher said their argument never made sense, and now he's hopeful prosecutors can do more to protect children exposed to poisonous meth and help their families.
We can use that information to try to intervene in the lives of adults who may be placing that child at risk, either through prosecution or through appropriate dependent neglect court order. I applaud the legislature for bringing a light to this situation.
Mike Dennison, MTN News, Helena.
All right, thanks so much, Mike. On to the weather scene tonight. We're a month into winter. So, Bob, how does our snow totals stack up to past years?
I thought you'd never ask. And what we're going to do is we've got several of these cities that we're going to show you what the snow totals are doing here. And let's go ahead and put this into motion. You'll notice here in Billings, so far, we've measured 44.3 inches of snow this winter. That goes all the way through like September, October, November. This is how much snow we've had this year. And you'll notice the normal is 26.1. So that means we're about 18.2 inches ahead of normal from years gone by. That's a lot. Elsewhere, places like Great Falls, they're at 39.7 inches. They're about 10 inches ahead of normal. Helena's about 14.9 ahead of normal. Look at Bozeman, 41.6 inches so far this year, and they are at 25.5 inches ahead of normal. What's interesting is Glasgow, they're at 21 inches, and they're right on the normal, so their departure from normal is 0. Our forecast is coming up next.
All right, thanks so much, Bob. Authorities in western Kentucky trying to figure out what led a 15-year-old student to open fire at his high school today, killing at least 2 classmates and injuring 17 more. Now, that teenager is in police custody tonight. Just before 8 o'clock this morning, the student walked into his high school's atrium and started shooting randomly. The 2 teenagers killed were a 15-year-old girl and 15-year-old boy. It's not currently known how the suspect got access to the handgun used in today's shootings. Special Counsel Robert Mueller now expressing interest in questioning President Donald Trump. The focus, his dismissals of former FBI Director James Comey and former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Now, this news comes the same day we've learned that Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Comey have both spoken with special counsel and investigators. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says the White House is fully cooperative with Mueller, but believes the American people are ready to move on. Alaska jolted awake today by a powerful underwater earthquake that set off sirens and warnings of a possible tsunami. The 7.9 magnitude quake was too far away, but geologists say it was in the worst spot for a potential tsunami. Just 4 hours after the quake, an 8-inch wave was all it left in its wake. Experts say where the quake struck is the same spot that spawned the second most powerful earthquake ever recorded. Coming up on tonight's 10 o'clock news, the big sky is on the big screen. Tonight, at a special showing of Montana-made movie. Plus, the latest Oscar nominations are out. Did any of your favorites get a nod? And later in sports, Montana will send at least 3 skiers to next month's Winter Olympics. Scott tells us who they are.
You're watching MTN News with Jay Cohn and Jeanelle Slade. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green.